Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world. I'm here at last, at last. So, sorry I'm a little bit late coming on. Oh, hang on. Another little disaster this morning. Do you know, wouldn't it be nice to just have one day where actually nothing went wrong? You just got up in the morning, you had a nice boring day where you just did routine things, nothing terrible happened, you didn't receive any terrible news, nothing terrible happened in your house, you didn't have an argument with anybody. I don't know. Just be nice, wouldn't it? Just one day where literally everything was normal. What is normal? The new normal is there is no normal. Just when you think you've got everything sorted, or there are some things, of course, you cannot change, like bereavement, things that are outside your control. But sometimes you just think things happen, you know, and you think, why has that happened? It's just like no reason for that happening whatsoever. Yes, some things are outside your control. Things happen in life, don't they? But sometimes you just think, bloody hell, what was that all about? And that's what happened to me yesterday, really. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. So, of course, those of you who are watching live and you don't like waffle, you're going to get quite a bit of waffle in this live, as in all the live streams. And you're probably better to wait until the shorter edited video goes out onto the channel or channels. Now I can only broadcast live to Vicky Marie chats because the sort of slightly disastrous thing, if you like, that happened today is my StreamYard ran out, and on StreamYard, unless you're on the paid plan, you can only stream to one destination. So that's what I was doing. Also, you only get a very limited amount of storage, so I had to erase a lot of videos to be able to record this, but I will record it. It is recording. I will edit it, and it will go out on both my channels. So that was today's little disaster. That's only a little disaster. I just can't do the StreamYard just yet. I've got to wait till next week. And that is sort of part of what went disastrously wrong yesterday. But anyway, I think I'll say my thank yous first. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Honestly, sometimes when things go wrong, I think thank God I've got my chatters and my channels. This is what keeps me sane sometimes. But sometimes that is part of what goes wrong, which find out in a minute what went wrong yesterday. Thank you so much. I appreciate every subscribe, every like, every comment, every email, etc. Thank you. Any way you engage with my channel, thank you. Those are all free ways, of course, you can help my channel. Some of you go a bit further. I've got my members who I'm eternally grateful for being members. We'll be having another members live next Thursday, exclusive members live. Special thank you to those of you who buy Ko-fis or coffees. Some people prefer the Ko-fi app. Some people prefer coffee. Buy me a coffee. There's not much between them. Personally, I prefer the Ko-fi app, but any contribution, whatever suits. Somebody send super stickers. Thank you for that. You PayPal me direct by Zoom. You buy merchandise or you buy my books. All these are ways that people go a little bit further to help me out. Thank you for that, especially. Thank you. So, hi, you lovely lurkers. Hello there. Hope you're all well. Thank you for watching. And hello, of course, to Replay Crew. Thank you for watching. Sort of, if you haven't managed to watch the live, you'll probably be either watching the live in replay or you'll be watching the edited video, whichever. Thank you so much. Okay, let's take the banner off, and I'm going to come and see who's in chat, say hello to before I start. And I do try and say hello to everybody who comes into chat. Sometimes I miss people. But if I miss you coming in, just say hello again, and then maybe I'll see it that time. I do try and keep up with my chat. Anyway, Sarah. Hello, Sarah. Yes, it's going to be better today. I've tried to wake up with a positive... Listen, don't get me wrong. I'm going to tell you what happened yesterday. It's not the end of the world. I mean, there's worse things happen. You know, the worst thing that's happened to me really recently is my sister dying. So it's not on that sort of level. Just something, you know, just one of those irritating things that you think... we all know what we're talking about, don't we? What I'm talking about. I'm sure you've had it. You know, you think everything's okay. You've got through another day because maybe something really big did happen. And you get through that day, and then it's a little thing that happened in one way, but it ruined my whole day. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Hi, Lily. Hi, Kelly. Thank you. Hope you're all okay. I hope you're not having disasters. There's something about this year, 2026, for me, has been an absolute disaster. It started with my computer breaking, like literally into the few days of the new year. Then it's been one thing after another, problems with the car, trying to get to buy a new computer. And every time I get there, something happens, like with the car, a lot of things happen. And you get that finally sorted, then there's something else, then my sister dying. And also just general, I'm having a bit of a whinge here. You know, work-wise, as far as my Spanish classes are concerned, they've gone really quiet. Everything's gone quiet. I think a lot of people are learning with apps nowadays. Also, there's not as many Brits here in Spain as there used to be, thanks to good old Brexit, another Brexit benefit. So, yeah, I would say very quiet as far as Spanish classes are concerned. And now this is a time that I'm coming to now, which I am quiet because it's summer, but it wasn't even busy in what's supposed to be the busy times. So it's been a very difficult year for many, many reasons. But I'm sure it has for everybody. I'm not trying to think that I'm the only person who has problems. I'm just like having a whinge. Right. You always have to count your blessings, don't you? I try and do that every day because, remember, not every day is a good day, but there's something good in every day. And there were good things yesterday. Hey, Kelly, that message you've just put up, they've held it for review, so I'm going to release it. Anos horribles. Yeah, it definitely is. This is a beer, Kelly. That's all. There's nothing spectacular. I'm having a beer. Feel like I deserve one. It's too early, really, for a beer, but it's never too early in Spain for a beer. Beer's just like a soft drink in Spain, even the Guardia Civil, not about the beer, but a couple of beers. I mean, obviously, not going to go out and have 20 beers. But yeah, beer's a nice drink in the summer, or shandy, those kind of things. Just hits the spot, and yeah, it's a Spanish thing. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. What was I going to say then? Oh yeah, you put that message up, Anos horribles, and YouTube hid it, but I've shown it again now, so it's showing up now. Joe, since I've started following the chat on my phone, I think there will have been loads of, because I never used to follow the chat on my phone. I'd try and follow it, just here on my screen, but you can't. But I've noticed that when I follow it on my phone, it comes up, these messages, that have been held for a review. It doesn't come up on my computer at all. It makes me wonder how many other messages. Sometimes people have said to me, my messages disappeared. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't removed the message. But now I can see. I wonder if this was the reason that sometimes people's messages have been blocked. But anyway, as I say, we can never understand YouTube properly, can we? Okay, so let's take the banner off. Now, what I am going to talk about in the main part of this video, I'm telling you, I think you'll be shocked. I was shocked. There's a few things that have shocked me since I've come into doing videos about true crime, things that I just didn't know, didn't realise. One of the big things that shocked me when I started looking into true crime, and it especially shocked me because of my own situation years ago when I was being stalked and I was pregnant at the time. Did you know that the main cause of death for pregnant women, now what would you think it'd be? Problems in childbirth, endometriosis, or one of these illnesses that we associate with pregnancy? No. The main cause of death for pregnant women is murder. Can you believe that? That women who die when they're pregnant, the main cause of death for pregnant women is murder. Now, I didn't know that, and I would never have imagined it, would you? You would think that someone who is pregnant had less chance, surely, of being murdered, because the person who murders them is murdering too. How can you murder a pregnant woman knowing there's even if you hated that woman, even if that woman had been the biggest bitch to you in the world and been horrible, really horrible, how could you then take it out on a woman who was carrying an innocent child? But then, of course, that's the other thing we find out. Children get murdered on a regular basis. There's some things you find out and you think, I don't know, I really wanted to know that. But these are the facts. The biggest cause of death for pregnant women is murder. And of course, when you think about it, there's so many high profile cases, isn't there? Chris Watts, Lacey Peterson. I mean, the list goes on and on. Pregnant women are not safe. You think you'd be more safe because you were pregnant? Because surely someone would stop short of murdering a pregnant woman. But no, they don't. Just terrifying, isn't it, when you find out these things? And this that we're going to find out about eldercide, I think they call it, the murder of elderly people and especially women. This is going to shock you. This is going to shock you. And you know what? These things are not talked about. When elderly people are murdered, unless in a case like, Nancy Guthrie, these are the two cases, aren't they, that I'm going to contrast. Nancy Guthrie, her case has reached attention because her daughter is famous. If Nancy Guthrie's daughter, Savannah, was not so famous, would Nancy's case have even been, received any attention? And Anne Widdicombe, so these are the two cases that I'm going to contrast from, other sides of the world, really. We've got Nancy Guthrie case, 84 years old. Well, we don't even know what's happened to Nancy yet, but it happened in her home, 84-year-old woman in Tucson, Arizona, in the USA. And then, of course, Anne Widdicombe in Devon, in the UK, again. It's only reaching attention because she was a famous, well-known politician and TV personality. How many more are there that we never even get to hear about? So common, not only for women, but more women. And when you read statistics about it, and the facts behind the people who murder them, it is shocking. Shocked me just as much as knowing that the most common cause of murder among pregnant women, the most common cause of death amongst pregnant women is murder. These are shocking facts that aren't talked about enough. And what is it? It's not glamorous enough, or as far as older women are concerned. How, again, people that are so vulnerable. Anne Widdicombe, 78 years old, 5'1" tall. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, both of them in their own home where they should have felt safe. So we're going to compare and contrast those two cases, and we're going to look at the statistics of elder side. Just shocking, because shouldn't we in a society be proud of the way we care for our vulnerable people in society, disabled people, for example, children, elderly people? These are the vulnerable of our society. And sometimes I think, especially elderly people, they've contributed to society all their lives. And then to finish their lives in this horrible, violent, tragic manner, it's just an outrage. I think, we need to get outraged about it. So that's what we're going to talk about when I get into it proper. So I'm going to give you some waffle first. Numerous cases, Kelly. Numerous cases. Hey, Julie. No, you've had 2 years of it. Oh gosh, it's so. I'm sorry to hear that. At least we can all support each other on here. And the same for one of you just want a boring day. Yeah, a boring day, or a week, or even a month would be nice. I honestly, at the moment, I just like one day where I just get up in the morning, I don't know, take my son to work, do whatever I'm doing, do the washing, do the cleaning, do the boring things, make pasta for lunch, have a glass of wine, and then go to bed, and nothing dramatic happening. I'm frightened to answer the phone or bloody answer the doorbell these days. It's like, it's never good news, is it? Never anyone knocking on your door with some good news or ringing you with some good news. It's all bad news. It's like, but there's other people I know that have had worse years and worse 2 years and whatever, I know that. As long as you're still standing the next day. Oh, so let me tell you, and as you say, Kelly, lots of high-profile cases where a woman is murdered and either turns out to be pregnant, or lots of women are murdered when they're fully blown pregnant. I mean, like Lacey Peterson or Chris Watts' his wife, Shannon. It's known that they're pregnant. It's a very vulnerable time for a woman. How can that be? How can that be? Just disgusting, isn't it? I do feel vindicated because when I was pregnant, I felt like in danger from my ex. Nobody believes you. It's interesting because, of course, this was years ago and I wasn't, doing true crime videos and I didn't know anything about it. And even my friends would say to me, oh no, he'd never do anything to you. He'd never hurt you. Yeah, he would. I knew it. I felt that I was in danger. I felt like I was in danger, and now I know I was, 100% know that I was. So I feel a bit vindicated in that, but it's not a good feeling. It's, it's a horrible feeling because, new life should be a cause for celebration, shouldn't it? And if you should feel safe at any time, from murder at least, you should feel safe when you're pregnant. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I think the reasons often, Kelly, that's right, the men didn't want another child. This is what happens. The woman gets pregnant and sometimes the man doesn't want a child. another child, because in both those cases they had other women, didn't they? And Scott Peterson and Chris Watts, they were, having an affair with somebody else's. So, because, the other thing is, and I've said this before, if a man is having an affair, he will be telling that woman he's having an affair with, oh, I never sleep with my wife. My marriage is over. Oh, I've fallen for it myself years ago. My marriage is over. It's just marriage in name only. We're not sleeping together. I love you. You're the one for me. Blah, de, blah, de, blah. And, but they are sleeping with them. I tell you, if you're having an affair with a married man and he's telling you, I'm not sleeping with my wife, it's a lie. If he's still living with her, and even if maybe he's not even living with her, he's still sleeping with her. So, of course, if the wives turn out to be pregnant, he's then going to panic, because now they've got to tell their mistress their wife's pregnant, because they're not sleeping together anymore. What they're going to say, it's the Immaculate Conception, or maybe they're going to say, oh, she's seeing somebody else. That's the other thing they quite often say. Sometimes it's not in cases of marriage, just somebody's not ready for a child. They don't want a child. There's cases that I've heard of where somebody had a career like in football, or I think David and Celeste Rivas, if it turns out that, because there's a lot of speculation that she may have been pregnant, and the whole thing was going to come out. They don't want it to ruin their career, or, they want to sleep with a 13-year-old maybe, but they don't want a baby with them. They don't want it to ruin their career prospects. So there's a lot of that, I think, as well. So the woman finds out she's pregnant, she's all excited and happy. And the man's like, well, I don't want a baby. I'm not ready for a baby yet. I'm too young, or I'm having an affair with someone, or, there's all sorts of reasons. So I think and also, sadly, another thing that happens with pregnant women is occasionally pregnant women are murdered and their baby's stolen. That's happened quite a few times, hasn't it? It's just terrible. The wickedness in there's a lot of good in human nature. I don't want to, make it out like everybody's a twonk, because they're not. But there's a lot of wickedness. There's great wickedness in human nature. That's why I think once you start studying true crime, you can't go back to detective shows and things like that, because there is nothing more shocking, if you like, than what happens in real life. Fiction can't compare to what actually happens in real life. What goes on behind people's grey cells. Just never know what people are thinking, do you? And there's nothing in fiction. There's nothing in any book that you will ever read, or any film you will ever see, that can compare to what happens in real life, sadly. Hey, Sarah. We're still live. So you say you're watching up, maybe you're on catch up, are you? But we are still live. I'm live now in this moment. So you're not technically on replay, but you might be on catch up. So yeah, yesterday, let me just tell you about yesterday, get that over with. So I sat down getting ready to do this live. Actually, I just got the thumbnail ready, that because I was planning on doing this subject yesterday of comparing Nancy and Anne's cases. So I sat down, all chilled, getting ready, done the thumbnail, just getting ready to, actually schedule the live. Poof, the internet goes off. So now it's not uncommon for the internet to go off here, as you know. It's very sort of hit and miss. I don't know why that is really, but it is. So I didn't panic at first. I just thought, oh, bloody hell, I'm right just on the point of getting this live scheduled. Anyway, so I thought, oh, well, it'd be back on in 5 minutes. Anyway, then I realised my phone was off. Hey, Sarah, joining me with a vodka. Yeah, good. Oh, look, the YouTubers hid that. Apparently, you're not allowed to have a vodka according to YouTube, but I'm going to show it. I thought, oh, the TV's off as well. So I thought, oh, I'll watch the news or whatever on the TV. And then my phone, I couldn't get my phone to work. I couldn't make a phone call. So I thought, oh, I'll ring because after it had been off for a while, I thought, oh, I'll ring the office of the internet and that's why I've got no internet. What's the problem with the internet? Couldn't. Everything's off, everything. So I waited another 15 minutes, nothing. I thought, I think I've been cut off. So I start checking into my, my accounts and what have you. When did I last pay? And when's it due? It's not due till the 23rd. My internet payment's not due till the 23rd. So I'm thinking, so you get like a range of time that you can pay for it. It becomes due on the 1st of the month, but you have until around about the 23rd to pay it. And anyway, they never cut you off just like that. They send you an email. They're going to cut you off because I've gone to the wire a couple of times. I'm always last minute with everything that pay. But you normally, a couple of days before, you get a message to say, look, if you don't pay within the next couple of days, this is your cut-off date. If you don't pay before then. Nothing. I didn't get anything like that. So I had to actually go down to the office. I can't get hold of anyone. Hi, Laura. I couldn't get hold of anyone because I can't phone, I can't use WhatsApp, I can't send an email. Just literally, it's hard. Do you know what's really scary, isn't it? How reliant we are on the internet. It's like nothing. I could not do anything without the internet. So I went down to the office, which luckily is not that far away. And luckily is a nice air-conditioned office because I was sat in there for about 2 hours in the end. So I said, oh, is there something wrong with the internet? My internet's gone off and my bill isn't due yet. And he looks and he goes, oh, yeah, they've cut you off. I was like, well, why have they cut me off? And he said, oh, I don't know. He said, I don't have anything to do with the cut-offs. That's the Centralica. That's the central office. They decided. He said, I don't know. He said, they don't normally cut you off without a warning beforehand. I said, oh. So I said, thing is, I can't, I've got no money. I'll transfer some money, but I can't transfer any money because I need to be on the internet to do that. Also, it's not instant. Anyway, I took with me number one son's card because I couldn't get hold of him for him to pay it, but luckily I had his card. But because it was over €50, you need the PIN number. Well, I don't know his PIN number, so it's like back to square one. Anyway, I cut a long story short, but I was sat in that office for 2 hours trying to get hold of someone who would pay this for me until I could get my money transferred and pay them back. And finally, very kindly, managed somebody that I know managed to, because I needed someone that could just send me the money instantly so that I could pay it there and then. Anyway, I did find somebody a couple of hours later. I sat in the office for a while. I was like frantically, while I had internet actually in the office, trying to get hold of people, but of course it was the middle of the day, people were working, doing stuff. Anyway, in the end I came home and I just sort of went and laid down in a dark room for an hour or whatever. And then I was starting to actually enjoy not having any internet because I was thinking, well, the thing is, when you've got no internet or whatever, you can't be answering messages. It's quite peaceful, to be honest. It is quite a peaceful feeling, but not really when your whole job, everything I do, whether it be my classes, which are on the internet, or YouTube, everything revolves around the internet, so It's like, and if you haven't got the internet, then you can't arrange for funds to be put into your account or whatever. Do you see what I mean? It was just everything you think of. You think, oh, I'll do this, and then think, oh, I can't do that. Because as soon as I left the office again, they let me connect up in the office. But as soon as I left the office again, I had no internet again. Anyway, I went back later. Somebody had very kindly helped me out. I paid the bill, and within 5 minutes, it was back on. But that was all day. That was literally about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It went off, 11 or 12, and it was back on at about 6:30, 7 o'clock. So that was my day yesterday. Oh, did you have a similar day? Alori, oh, that's very kind. Thank you so much. So, did you have a similar day? But how one little, I mean, it's, you know, in the grand scale of things, you know, it's not that important, is it? Or it shouldn't be, you know, your internet going off for a few hours. But it caused so much stress and anxiety. Oh, because the thing is, although then even when I was in the office, I could message number one son, but he has got, his phone comes under the internet, so he didn't have internet. So I could message him, but he couldn't receive the message or answer. So it was just, it's like being in this void. It's really quite scary how reliant we have become on internet, because when you think before internet, I still ran a successful business, you know, using the phone, like the landline and what have you know, then emails came in and you'd sort of, you know, use emails. But of course, it's a long time. We had no WhatsApp, no, you know, you weren't contacting your customers by internet. Now the internet goes off and that's it. You're absolutely fucked. Excuse my French, but you are, because you can't do anything. I couldn't make a bank transfer. I couldn't contact people. There was just nothing that I could do. It was very, and the thing is, trying to explain in the office, they're just like, oh, we'll just pay the bill, you know, but I wanted to pay the bill. And then I still don't know. When I went back later on to pay it, and I said to the girl, it was a different girl, and I said, do you know why they cut me off? Because it's not actually due till next week. She said, oh, no, we don't know. She know it might have just been a mistake or blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah. And I thought, oh, my God, well, I'll have to remember that in future. So I'm thinking, oh, I've got sort of a couple of weeks to pay the bill. I haven't. So it needs to be paid like immediately, I suppose. But sometimes, you know, the thing is, you make your arrangements according to your, you know, I know that I'd be able to pay that bill before it was overdue. And I had that in my mindset. Otherwise, I would have kept some money in my account to pay for it. Oh, I don't know. You know what I'm saying. You're just totally arbitrary. Let's cut her off and cause havoc. But nobody knew why. But of course, you can't reach La Centralica, the central office. This, you know, it's not the girl in the office's fault. She doesn't have any control over that. So there's no point in, you know, getting angry with her. She just said, I don't know why they've done it. Maybe it was a mistake. She said, I just don't know. She said, because normally they would never cut anyone off without letting them, you know, giving them a few days, you know, sending them an email first or a message and saying, right, you've got a couple of days to pay or whatever. She said, it's really unusual. Thought, oh, thank you. Thank you, my fibre provider. I mean, the thing is, there isn't really another one. Otherwise, I would have changed to another one because they're pretty crap out anyway. It's not the fastest connection in the world. And then they just cut you off just like that. Boom, nothing. But it's the way I was sort of sat here thinking, yeah, they won't have cut me off. They can't have cut me off. And I'm checking back through all my, you know, times that all my records, like, no, you know, seeing the dates that I've paid before, and it's always been before the 23rd, and it's never been a problem. And now suddenly, yesterday was the 16th of July, and they suddenly decided they're going to cut me off a week early and just for no good reason whatsoever. So anyway, that was my day. What was your day, Alora? Let us know. Are you all okay now? Are you okay now, Alora? Thank you so much for the super chat. Is everything sorted now? I hope so. Thing is, these are like, it's not the end of the world, as I say. It's not, the worst thing that's happened to me really is my sister dying last week. So this is nothing in comparison to that. But it's still a big thing that causes a lot of hassle, isn't it? Anyway, I felt like I lost a day. Put it that way. I felt like I lost a whole day. I couldn't go on straight. And then by the time I did get it sorted, by about 7 o'clock in the evening, I had to go and get my son from work. My head was like, and believe me, by 9 o'clock last night, I was in bed. It was hot as well. So that anyway, that's my whinge over with. That's what happened to me yesterday. And you just like, yeah, one nice boring day would be good, wouldn't it? Just get up in the morning, have your coffee, have your breakfast, do the bits and pieces you've got to do without incident. Watch a bit of telly in the evening, have something nice to eat, have a drink maybe, if that's your, if you like to have a glass of wine or whatever, and go to bed. That is a perfect day, isn't it? Nice boring day would be nice. So we'll see. Okay, so let's get on to talking about these two cases. So yeah, we're going to compare. I mean, it wasn't a bad a day as Anne Widdicombe had last week, was it? When some monster, allegedly, because he hasn't been charged yet, this 28-year-old man who is in custody has still not been charged with the murder of Anne. And I love this photo of Anne and Aloysius, her cat. It's a beautiful photo that just tells a story, doesn't it? That poor cat looks blissfully happy there. He'll be wondering what the hell is going on. He's been taken away from the home is a crime scene still. So this poor woman, 78 years old, bludgeoned to death in the kitchen of her own home. And I want to compare that case because I see the similarities. There are differences too, of course. Thank you, Alora. Yes, it was very sad. But you know what? My sister, she's been ill for a while. She's quite a lot older than me. She had Alzheimer's. Anyway, it's a long story. But she's no more pain now, no more suffering. She wasn't that old. She was 76 years old. But of course, when you've got a disease like Alzheimer's or dementia, your days are not as long as people who don't have those problems. I mean, the thing is about Anne Widdicombe, she was as sharp as a tack mentally. She was 78 years old. She probably had the normal aches and pains of a 78-year-old. She wouldn't have been in perfect health, but she had no major health issues as far as we know. And, mentally, she was as sharp as anything. But her life was violently brought to an end by a 28-year-old, allegedly, by a 28-year-old hulking giant of a man who traveled 400 miles or whatever from Yorkshire to Devon just with a stick, with the express purpose of murdering this old lady. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. She's a 78-year-old woman that was murdered. And it's eldercide, they call it, at the end of the day. Brutal. So we're going to compare that case with the case of Nancy Guthrie. So this is another elderly woman. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old. Again, a high-profile case, not because Nancy was necessarily famous in her own right, but because her daughter Savannah Guthrie is a famous talk show host on American TV. This happened, of course, in Tucson, Arizona. So the biggest difference, so I'm going to look at the similarities and the differences between these two cases. And I think the biggest difference is, of course, that Nancy Guthrie is a no-body case. We don't know where Nancy is, whereas Anne was found in the kitchen of her luxury home. They're both luxury homes as well, aren't they? Or big properties, like quite, they were both killed in big properties, quite remote properties. Nancy's over there in Tucson, Arizona, a beautiful property with a swimming pool. And Widdicombe, beautiful property with a swimming pool as well. So that's where there's similarities. But of course, the biggest difference is whereas Anne was found there in her home, Nancy still has not been found. Now, Nancy disappeared at the very end of January. I think it was the 30th of January or 1st of February. And here we are now on the 17th of July, and we're no further on. So one thing we do know is Nancy has disappeared. We presume, I think, that she is deceased because there was blood everywhere. There was blood everywhere on that porch of Nancy's. So some sort of injury befell her. So that blood has been found to have been Nancy's blood. So, I mean, really, apart from that, we don't know much more officially. There was talk that the house was not disrupted. That was nearly, what did they say, nearly immaculate or whatever. So Nancy's medication was not taken, her bag, her purse, her phone. Was her phone taken? I don't think so. So just the only thing that disappeared was Nancy herself. Then, of course, we've had all these kidnap notes. If they were real, I personally don't think the kidnap notes, the ransom notes, are genuine. I think they're from a genuine person, obviously, but I honestly, my opinion is that those ransom notes were sent deliberately to, what's the word, were sent deliberately to, as decoys, to make people think that Nancy had been kidnapped. I don't think Nancy was ever kidnapped. I think Nancy's, now the police in the UK are saying, that Anne's attack was a targeted attack, and they're investigating into the possibility that it was a terrorist attack or terrorist connection, but they haven't, they've passed the case over to the terrorism squad, but they haven't actually said, oh, look, everyone's being kind. They haven't actually said that it was a terrorist attack yet. We have to remember that. Even though it's being investigated by the terrorism squad, we've had nothing official to say. Apparently things were found at the guy's house, weren't they, that may be like, communist pamphlets and things like that. Thank you, Sarah. That's very kind. Thank you. Everyone feeling sorry. Oh, and you're right, Julie. They should compensate me for the inconvenience. But you know what? I may email them, because the thing is, you can't get anywhere in the office, because the people I spoke to in the office, who were really helpful, to be honest, couldn't have been more helpful. But they have nothing to do with whether you're cut off or not. They don't cut you off. They just deal with the admin side of things. All that's coming up on their computer is I've been cut off, and to get put back on, I've got to pay. So, because, they're not in control of the actual cutting off. So you can't get anywhere in the actual office. But I will send an email and see if I can at least, complain or something. But Sarah, thank you so much. Yeah, to better times. Do you know, my life actually is a lot. I was thinking that, and I thought, if none of these stupid, irritating things, I quite like my life. I'm quite happy with I want a boring life now. I've had enough drama in my 63 years. I've had so much drama. I won't care if I never had any more drama. You know, it's like I want a boring life. There's a lot to be said for a boring life. I've had so many, you know, and anybody who wants to know about what I'm talking about, maybe this is the time to just show briefly. You know, I have like a autobiography, I suppose you'd call it. Oh, I can't put picture up because I'm on the StreamYard free thing. Yeah, my book, Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, Vicky Riley. You can get that on any Amazon site, and that'll explain some of the dramatic things that have happened in my life. I don't want drama. You know, and I wonder if that's the same for Anne and Nancy. You know, they were women living alone. The thing is that Nancy, thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you so much. Nancy in particular. Now, Anne had never been married, had she? She just never met the right one, or it had just not, stars hadn't aligned for Anne. I think Anne probably would have liked to have got married, maybe would have liked to have had children, but it didn't happen for her. But I don't think she was maudlin about that. Anne was no nonsense. This is her life. I think she enjoyed her life. She enjoyed politics. She enjoyed everything she did. And if we've got time, after I've compared these two cases, I'd like to show you an interview that she did where I found it fascinating. You get real insight into Anne as a person. Yeah, I think she enjoyed everything she did. She's enjoyed her career. Maybe she did regret not getting married and having children, but I don't think she's the sort of person that would regret it. Then, of course, Nancy, she had been married and had 3 children, and she had a tragic thing happen because her husband died. Nancy was only 46 when her husband died suddenly of a heart attack. And she was left then to bring up the children who were sort of varying ages. And she made a good job of it because one of them turned out to be Savannah Guthrie, the famous TV anchor. Her son Cameron, was a pilot in the forces. And Annie is a respected poet in her, you know, in her sort of clique of poetry, and you know, she's a respected, but whether we like her poetry or not, I personally, it's not for me, it's too depressing. But she, you know, she had accolades, she's written a book, so they're all been successful in their own right. So I think we could say that Nancy made a good job of bringing up her children, despite the fact she was a single parent from 46 years old. So, you know, and this is, and the thing is, these ladies were living alone. A lot of women live alone as they get older. Maybe they've been married, or maybe they've had relationships that hasn't worked out. Maybe they've had violent, you know, the domestic violence in their relationship, so they don't. Sometimes women just don't want another relationship. Some women do. Some women will do anything for a relationship, but not these 2 women. These 2 women were strong women, they were perfectly capable of, you know, supporting themselves financially. Of course, they were comfortable, but supporting themselves. You know, not maybe they're happy. They've got friends. You know, I think women do rely on their friends more than men, don't they? I think men like to be in a relationship normally because they don't tend to talk to their friends the same that women do. If you see what I mean, a woman with lots of good friends around her, she doesn't, you know, she can have a social life. It doesn't need a man in her life, and especially if she's financially independent. Why would she want a man that maybe she had to wash his socks, or, you know, I don't know, cook his dinners or whatever? Just some women are quite comfortable without a man. I think especially sometimes when they've had a bad experience with a man, but or a woman, of course. I mean, some women can cope on their own. I think much more than men can. I think men like to be in a relationship for various reasons. Yeah, Julie. Listen, do you know what? Yesterday I thought I don't want to live in Spain anymore because I'm sure these things happen in the UK as well. I don't know about mix-ups over bills and stuff. But seems to happen a lot here in Spain. I've had problems with the water. Well, I won't go into it all because I'm talking about Nancy and Anne. But yeah, just always seem to be like these admin problems, and you anyway. Never mind. But yeah, I hope you got that sorted in the end, Julie. Yeah, they just, and the other thing that happens here, of course, they just take money out of your bank account willy nilly. You can't do that in the UK. I think there's only the government can take money out of your bank account, is it? Oh, not here. They're left, right, and centre. Anyone can try and take some money out of your bank account here in Spain. So just be advised about that. That's why it's always a good idea to have. That's why I don't keep money in my bank account. Because it sort of backfired on me yesterday. That meant I would have had to transfer it, but because listen, you leave money in your bank account, next minute someone's in there taking it out. So I, try to keep your finances separate in Spain so you've got backup. Oh, not when you've got no internet, you've got no backup. So yeah, in Spain, it's important to pay your electricity and your internet because without that, you're absolutely FUCK indeed. So yeah, these two ladies, both strong, independent ladies. Now, I think another similarity between these two ladies is they're quite forthright politically. I'm still not sure that the reason that Nancy was targeted, as I think she was targeted, may have been political because Nancy was very open on her Facebook account of her disdain for Trump. Now, what it's like these days. You can't have a political opinion without somebody wants to kill you for it. It's like if you don't agree with them, then, you must die. It's not like the healthy debate's gone out the window. People are either you do what I say or, you're an idiot or, it's political debate is very antagonistic, isn't it, these days? So it is entirely possible, in my humble opinion, that somebody might have got angry with Nancy for her political views. I don't think that's the reason she was targeted. In my personal opinion, I think Nancy was targeted for financial reasons, which originally was why Anne was thought to have been targeted, wasn't it? So when this all first came out about Anne, well, first of all, they didn't realise there'd been a crime. That was the other strange thing about Anne. They think the murder happened on the Thursday, don't they? On the Friday morning, or do they think it happened on the Wednesday? Anyway, there's probably a 24-hour period where nobody knew what had happened to Anne. Then her body was found. That was on the last Thursday. Was it last Thursday or the Thursday before? What day is it today? I don't even, it's Friday today. So yeah, not yesterday, the Thursday before. Body was found. It's unclear who found it. Some sources say a gardener, others say a carer. And she was dead in the kitchen, covered in blood. Now, I think originally they thought it was an accident. And the following day, Anne's agent, released, press release to say that Anne Widdicombe had died. And I don't think anyone really thought much of it, because although she was hale and hearty, she was 78 at the end of the day. So, people die at 78, who die much younger. That was in the morning, and everybody was presenting their eulogies, got all the good memories of Anne and all the positive things about her. And I think the most common thing that people have said about Anne, which is exactly what I said, I'm one of the, most, this is the common feeling that people have towards Anne, I think, is maybe didn't agree with her views, but respected her for other things. Like the Strictly Come Dancing and the way she could laugh at herself. The fact she stood up to child killer Mick Philpott in the documentary. She was a firecracker. And people respect that. One thing I think we always have to remember, no matter whether you do agree with anyone's views or not, we can't agree on everything. But people do respect people who genuinely have convictions, whether they're the same convictions as them or not. Oh, Julie, thank you so much. That's very kind. Oh no, I couldn't. Well, hopefully there won't be a next time, Julie, but that's very kind. Julie says next time. Call me, yes, I have Bizoom. Yeah, the good thing about Bizoom, of course, is it is instant, isn't it? It's instant, and it's a free service. I think it's only in Spain, is it, Julie? I'm not sure. I don't think it's an international thing, but it's really good. Bizoom. It's been a good. It's not been around that long, has it? But it's good. Thank you so much. That's so kind, Julie. Thank you. As I say, you guys, you're just the best. Thank you so much. I run out of words and I'll start crying in a minute, probably, because everyone's so kind. So the agent everyone was eulogizing about Anne. Most people, as they respect her, whether they agree with her or not. And I think that was the most common thing that people were saying about her. May not agree with all her views, but I respect her. Then later on that same Friday, we're all in this together, Julie. Yeah, we certainly are. And we're not getting out of it alive, are we? We're not getting out of it alive. Next thing, the police came out and said, they were treating it as murder. That just came out of left field, didn't it? It was like, what? So, for all day, people had been saying, eulogies to Anne for, various things that people respected her for. Next minute, the police are saying, it's a murder. And then they arrested a guy very quickly, and people thought, good, they've caught a 24-year-old local man from Newton Abbot, not far from Anne's home. And we thought, this is it, they've got the person. And of course, I think most of the speculation at the time was a robbery gone wrong. Anyway, it wasn't. So he was then released first thing the next morning, last Saturday morning, not the Saturday just gone, the Saturday before. That man was released. And then later on Saturday evening, round about midnight, I think it was, or earlier, they announced they had another man in custody, a 28-year-old man. But this time, this man was from miles away in Rotherham, in Yorkshire. And you're talking about someone who's got into his car on that Wednesday morning, or whichever morning it was, with a stick. We've seen CCTV of him with his stick, and driven all the way to Anne's house. That's a long way. Probably took 4 hours. A lot of petrol, a lot of petrol. Lucky him to have enough money to buy petrol in these days, that he could drive 4 hours there and 4 hours back to murder a little old lady. and he's still in custody. And since then, he's been rearrested, as say, under the Terrorism Act, which gives them longer to question him. But they have not confirmed yet that it was an act of terrorism. We don't know if he's left wing, right wing. Apparently, he had communist pamphlets in his home. You know, so there's so much we don't know. And we always have to remember, he hasn't been charged with anything yet. Nothing. So it's all, he's haven't been questioned. This forensic, you know, Anne's house is still a crime scene. His house is being forensically searched. But no charges yet are laid. So there's a difference in these two cases. You feel like Anne's case is getting somewhere. There's a suspect in custody, of course, and you do feel that this time the police do feel they've got the right man, and you know, you feel like charges are going to come soon. Let's hope so. Anyway. Now, I think a similarity with Nancy's case is I personally do think the Devon and Cornwall police cocked this up in the beginning. And I do feel with Nancy's case, of course, Peamar County Sheriff Nanos, he cocked it up from the beginning, didn't he? Now, what we've got in the Anne case is we've now got the terrorism police dealing with it, and they seem to have been much more efficient. So the Devon and Cornwall police, they did 2 press conferences, one of which they just seemed to be congratulating themselves on what brilliant police work they'd done. You know, even though they seemed to think it was a burglary at first and they arrested the wrong man at first. But yeah, they said it was a prime example of British policing at its best. No, it wasn't. But now, maybe, I think since the terrorism squad have taken over it, I'm sure they're dealing with it better. So that reminded me a little bit of Nancy's case, where it was Peamar County Sheriff Nanos. He, of course, cocked it all up at first, you know, didn't seal off the crime scene. So there were journalists trotting in and out and up to the front door. There was pizza delivery guy turned up. The blood that was on the porch was filmed by a journalist. The mat on the porch was just left there, wasn't picked, even though that perpetrator, because we've got the CCTV of the guy stood at Nancy's door, he was stood right on that mat. And that mat still hasn't been well, it'd be pointless taking it now because it's probably had so many people stood on it or near it, but they never took it, and it may have had DNA on it. It's like, why did they not take that mat away? So yeah, I think a similarity in these cases is being cocked up from the beginning, but hopefully now, if the FBI are dealing with Nancy's case, it's getting dealt with better, and we're waiting for the DNA results. So there was some alien, I don't mean alien as in alien, so there was some DNA from an unknown male in Nancy's house, and that of course is being checked through at the moment, gone to genetic genealogy, and hopefully that will turn up some results. But releasing the video and the photos of the perpetrator from the cameras hasn't turned up any results as far as we know. So as far as Nancy is concerned, we still have no suspects, no persons of interest. 2 people were falsely detained. Well, say falsely, they were detained and not charged. So that's another similarity with Anne's case, where one person was arrested on suspicion but then never charged and then released and cleared. Now, the difference there is, in Anne's case, that 24-year-old, the police said he had nothing to do with it. Whereas I think in Nancy's case, those 2 people that were detained, Luke Daly and Carlos, they've never been cleared, even though they weren't arrested. You know, their houses were searched, their cars were examined, etc. And they weren't charged with anything. but they haven't been cleared either. You know, the law enforcement has not come out and said, oh, they definitely have nothing to do with it either. Whereas in Anne's case, the first person who was detained, they have said that they didn't have anything to do with it. So there's some similarities, some differences. Nancy's is completely different in the sense there is no body, whereas with Anne's we have a body, sadly. And you know, the good thing about having the body is it gives a wealth of forensic information, doesn't it? You know, DNA and all sorts of things, and of course they'll be able to establish a cause of death. Whereas for poor Nancy, we have no bodies. We don't even really know that she's dead, but we're presuming she's dead because that blood came from somewhere. But we don't know definitively that she's dead, and we have no cause of death because we have no body. Will we ever know? What's the scary thing about Nancy's case, especially, I think, is will we ever know what happened to Nancy? Please, God, don't let that be so. Because at least with Anne, I do feel we know we're going to find out. Probably the police know already exactly what happened to her. Someone's going to be charged. Someone's going to be held accountable. The police will be getting their case together, won't they? Whereas with Nancy, surely this can't be that this is going to go on and on and on, and we're never going to know what happened to Nancy, what the motive was. For whatever it is. I mean, it's bound to be money because it's normally money, isn't it? But it can be an sex motive, even with elderly people. We can't think just because they were older, there wasn't that kind of motive. People develop obsessions in all sorts of cases. You know, there are cases where elderly people are abused in an sex way as well. But I think we have to presume probably there's a money motive. I don't think Nancy's was a burglary gone wrong. I never thought from the beginning that Anne's was either. Or it was possible, wasn't it, I suppose. So what we're going to look at in a minute, I'm just going to go and have a bathroom break and get another drink. But we're going to have a look at this. Now, this is what is really going to shock you. These poor ladies, they're just typical statistic. So as I was saying earlier, of statistics that can shock you, you know, like knowing that the biggest cause of death amongst pregnant women is murder. Would you ever have thought that in a million years? You know, if somebody said to you, oh, what's the biggest cause of death in pregnant women, you'd probably say problems in childbirth or endometriosis or some of these illnesses that are associated with pregnancy. Surely you would never have thought that the biggest cause of death amongst pregnant women would be murder, but it is. Now we're going to look at some more shocking statistics about elderly abuse, about eldercide, as they call it, and particularly in women. And it's very scary because, you know, if you're a woman, you're getting older. You know, we're all getting older. I mean, I'm older. I'm far off Anne's age and Nancy's age. But you know what? Time passes quickly. You know, luckily for me, I don't live alone. Well, I say luckily, like sometimes you wish you did live alone. Be less cleaning, less washing, less cooking. And also I've got 3 dogs, one of which is a great big German Shepherd who's been very quiet today. Where is she? It must be the heat. Yeah, it's just lying down at Sadney. I think the heat's knocked her out. Yeah, if you're, now when I say elderly, I'll never forget when I was in my 50s and reading a news article that was talking about an elderly woman that had been attacked, 54. I was like, elderly? Well, you know, so elderly is all subjective, isn't it? You know, when you're 51, 54 doesn't seem elderly, does it? But, you know, of course, when you're 21, yeah, 41 seems elderly, doesn't it? age is very subjective. As you get older, you know, you think elderly, 54. And now I'm 10 years on again from that, and I'm positively ancient now. But I'm still quite a lot younger than Anne and Nancy were. But, you know, why shouldn't you be able to live on your own as you get older? Now, neither of these ladies had a dog. I do think having a dog helps. But I think the purpose that I want to do this video, as well as the fact it's interesting to look at these statistics of eldercide, because we're all getting older. If we're lucky, we'll get to be old. If you don't get to be old, you die young. So, you know, one thing we're all guaranteed is either to die young or we're going to get old, one or the other. And if you're a woman, you are at heightened risk as you get older, which is shocking, isn't it? You wouldn't think that, really, would you? And there's all different reasons why people murder elderly people, and they're different reasons for men and women, and they've got a different statistical probability. And that's what we're going to talk about in literally just 2 minutes. I'm going to just go and have a bathroom break. I don't think I can put up a... So I will be back in 5 minutes. I'll put the picture of Anne and her cat up because I just go and have a bathroom break and get a drink. And then I'll be back to talk about these statistics. And I just want to warn you, if you are a woman who lives on your own, elderly or not, you know, take your security seriously. Because I think even nowadays, more than ever, I hate that expression, more than ever, but it's true. I think in these days where people are struggling money-wise big time, and drugs are so prevalent, and alcohol, and probably a combination of the two, and this general sort of lack of respect for older people, I think the odds are becoming sadly greater and greater. You know, that if you live on your own and you don't take security precautions, I mean, a lot of it depends on the country you live in as well. I mean, look at the UK. When do you ever last see a policeman? When you were wandering around the streets or driving or going somewhere. Do you know how many police cars I saw this morning just to take my son to work? And that was this morning. Here in Spain, the one thing you cannot complain about is lack of police. There's police everywhere. Oh, I can't get in the car and go up to the supermarket without seeing police cars. They're not walking on the beat. They're not, you don't see, I don't think they've ever had bobbies on the beat. I don't know. But you don't see them walking around. They're in cars. They're patrolling constantly. Or on motorbikes, of course, or even sometimes around the beach areas, and that quite often they're on cycles, you know, on bicycles, you know, whatever's the easiest thing to get around in, but they are everywhere. Honestly, I say just this morning at 8:30 in the morning, I've seen gone past 2 police cars patrolling. But in the evenings, and like especially when the football's on, and or you know, special occasions and weekends, there's police everywhere. That's one thing you're not short of in Spain. Whereas, of course, in a lot of other places, you know, they're controlled. You know, Britain in particular, I think, is policed by CCTV, which is great for catching someone afterwards, but it's not great for actually catching someone in the act or stopping someone do something. You know, where's the actual, you know, police is absolutely threadbare, isn't it? Right, I'll be back in 5 minutes. In fact, I will just, no, I won't remove that. See you in 5. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, Kelly, can you imagine a lot of domestic violence after football matches? If it wasn't in England, whoever loses in football matches, yeah, there's going to be, there's going to be, it is quite scary, isn't it? But, we're all in mourning in our house over. Anyway, Lee said about England losing the football, the better those blooming Argentinian hobbits, evil hobbits with little man syndrome. But dirty players. Anyway, so we're all cheering for Spain now. Come on, Spain. Hope Spain wins. But of course, it'll be chaos in Spain if it wins. Really will. But anyway, in a good way, in a good way. So let's have a look at this. So we're going to look at some of these statistics, which really are quite scary. Honestly, I was shocked. I was shocked. Now, I don't know if I would have asked you, thinking like if somebody would have asked me, do you think old people get murdered often? I'd say no. Like I would think, pregnant women didn't get murdered often. Because you can't get your head around it. You can't believe how could it's not easy to kill someone, just not easy. It takes a lot of anger, so even if it's somebody who's really been horrible to you, maybe it's difficult to kill someone physically. It's difficult to kill someone. It's not easy. You don't just sort of I don't know, hit them over the head once and that's it, they're dead. Or, strangle them for 2 minutes. And that, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of rage. I think a lot of us cannot get our head around it. But especially, could you imagine hurting an old lady, whatever, although I know I'm is a feisty woman and all those things, she's still only 5'1" and she's 78 years old. Or Nancy being 84-year-old, waking her up in bed with a balaclava on, and that terrifying. Imagine how terrified Anne would have been to see that man in her kitchen with a stick. And of course, we still don't know, did he just walk in there? Did she leave the door open? We don't know why he targeted her in particular. If it was a political act, why did he target her? Because she's an elderly woman and frail and vulnerable. This great big hulking guy. What a man. What a man that all he could do was attack a defenseless 78-year-old woman. You just think, oh, apparently his family have come out and said, oh, they can't believe it because he's a gentle giant. Well, they didn't know him very well, did they? He's not a gentle giant. He went off, drove for 4 hours with murder on his mind. He had every opportunity to stop and turn back. And all that rage simmered in him for all those hours. So, no, he's not a gentle giant. Not. So, I'm so angry with him for what he did to Anne, not because of Anne, of who she was, and just because at the end of the day, this was a lady, a vulnerable pensioner who she couldn't fight back. I mean, Anne was good with words, but physically she couldn't fight him back, could she? Terrible, horrible. Same with Nancy. These people, they think they're men or big men or whatever, going around terrorizing 84-year-old women. What sort of a man does that make you? You're pathetic, pathetic creatures. So let's have a look at this. So, right, now, I'm going to read this out, but I'm going to share it as well. This is an AI overview, but just for ease of quickness, but there's lots of, you can research this. I've researched it quite a lot. Just share it. Older women are most commonly murdered in their own homes by someone they know. This is making me fill up a little bit, actually, because it's really so sad. It's so sad. Often a male family member or an intimate partner. It's not safe having a partner being a woman. Sometimes I think you're just not safe having a partner. It's just like better off not bothering, because fancy being at danger from your intimate partner. These are the people who are supposed to love you, or your family member, your son, your grandson. These are the people that are more likely to kill elderly women in their own homes. Isn't that awful? Now, of course, as far as Nancy Guthrie is concerned, there's a lot of people talking about Tommaso, the son-in-law, financial reasons. And this all started, I think, right in the beginning. Was he a suspect in the beginning? Ashley Banfield said he was. She said her sources had told her he was a suspect. Maybe he was. Maybe that's where Sheriff Nanos went wrong, focusing in on Tommaso and not looking at other avenues. So, older women are more commonly murdered in their own homes by someone they know, often a male family member or intimate partner. While elderly people are generally less likely to be victims of violence than younger groups, a significant portion of older female homicides includes family violence, burglary, and excessive physical force. That, again, to me, you just think excessive physical force against an elderly woman. You wouldn't even need excessive physical force, would you? They're frail. Certainly an elderly woman would be more frail than a sort of 30-year-old woman. So approximately half of older female homicide victims are killed by family members like sons, grandsons, or spouses. It made me feel sick to read that, honestly. I just thought, how can that be? But about a quarter of older women are killed by strangers, which is often during a property crime, such as a break-in or a burglary. And up to 87% of older women are murdered inside their own homes. Just seems worse, doesn't it? Somehow that they're murdered in their own homes. If you can't feel safe in your own home, where can you feel safe? It stops you feeling safe. Especially, the thing is, if you live in a place like Nancy lived in or Anne lived in, quite remote, like this, who's going to hear it happening as well? Or it's just, honestly, I'm speechless about this. I cannot believe it. This is another thing that is shocking. Excessive violence. Studies reveal that older female victims are frequently subjected to overkill, which means the killer used much more violence than was needed to cause death. They are most commonly beaten to death or killed with sharp weapons. Oh my God. Why? Why? So here's the risk factors. Living alone. Older women who live alone or have physical or mental vulnerabilities like dementia. Sorry, I could cry now. Are targeted because they're seen as easy to overpower. How could you do it? How could you do it? You know, this is how people, thing is, predators, whether they're doing it for financial reasons or just for the thrill of killing someone, because that happens, of course, as well. They pick the easiest victim, don't they? That's why children get picked so often, because children are tiny and they're easy to overpower and they're easy or easier to kill. You know, if you're that sort of a twonk that you can look at a child in the face and then murder it, you know, like Preston Davies' parents or adopted parents. What's wrong in our society that anyone could do that? You know, it's like, how can you look vulnerability in the face like that? Literally beat someone to death who's already so frail. Experts know that the murder of older women is a silent crisis. Their deaths often get less media attention and they are left out of domestic abuse policies. We've had a few cases lately in Spain where partners, elderly partners, been murdered by their spouses. You know, you wouldn't think by the time you get into your 70s you had to worry about domestic violence, would you? But I think this is very appropriate as well, or very needs talking about. The only reason we're talking about Nancy and Anne is because of their, well, Anne famous in her own right, of course, you know, first as a politician, then a TV personality, forthright views, etc. So, you know, Anne's been around forever, it feels like. So people know about her. That's why, if Anne was, you know, Anne Jones from up the road in Devon, who nobody, she wasn't famous, would her case even be being talked about? You know, if it was a burglary gone wrong, or if it was a grandson, or, you know, what would Anne's case even be being discussed if she wasn't, you know, a household name in the UK and in other countries? And the same with Nancy. Would Nancy's case even be being discussed if it wasn't for the fact that Savannah Guthrie is one of her daughters? And it's, you know, even it doesn't seem to be helping with them catching the person. 6 months gone by and they still haven't got them. Oh, just chilling. So, yeah, if you're an older woman, I don't even know what they mean by an older woman. Does that mean over 50, over 60, over 70? What? Living alone? Well, I'll tell you what, if you're an older woman living alone, get a bloody big dog, that's all I can say. Or make sure your security systems are up to date and, you know, make sure that you are being protected. Locked area you live in. Yeah, I think I live in a safe area, but I don't leave my door open. And sometimes when it's hot, you think you wish you could leave the door open. You can't, because you can't watch that. You don't know who might come in. And I live in a built up street. You know, someone would be struggling to, you know, not be noticed coming up my steps into my house. But you never know. You just never know. So, you've always got no matter whether you live in the safest area, I'm sure Anne felt safe. I'm sure Nancy felt safe. You're not safe. Sadly, no one is safe, no matter what area they live in. No matter if there's not been a crime in your village for 20 years, that doesn't mean to say there might not be one tonight and it might not be you. You know, you've got to be so aware of your safety, which is a sad reflection on society, isn't it? You know, you often hear older people My mum and dad would always say, oh, we used to leave our doors open and this, that and the other. Well, you know what? When they all left their doors open, nobody had anything to take. When my mum and dad were talking about times after the war. Well, first of all, you've got the wartime spirit where everyone's feeling like they're all on the same page. And then the fact there's nothing to take anyway. Nobody had anything, didn't have iPhones and things like that lying around, devices that are easy money. And also there wasn't the same drug epidemic that there is now. Alcohol or drugs or a combination of the two, but especially drugs. I'm sorry, I think we've seen this since the drug epidemics. I remember it. I was brought up on a council estate. We didn't have a problem when I was little. And then as I grow, I remember it happening, like the teenagers were glue sniffing. That's what it started with. And they started vandalising things. Like, we never had vandalism. Like, I watched these teenage boys once, they were kicking out the bus shelter, the glass in the bus shelter outside where we lived, just for the sake of it. I mean, what is the point in that? It's the most pointless act. Like, when I was a teenager, we didn't do that. We didn't go around vandalising things because we weren't glue sniffing. And then suddenly everyone's glue sniffing. Then it's drugs and this, that, and the other. And then suddenly, a lot of the older people that lived on our council estate, because, when my mum and dad were given that council house and brought their family up in it, and then, of course, all those, what you might say, old school council house occupants, they started to get older, like my mum and dad did, and their families grew up and moved away. And but they were still there, elderly people, vulnerable. But my house, my dad's house was like Fort Knox. You couldn't get in it even if you had a key half the time. He was so paranoid about being broken into in the end because there were so many robberies. So all the windows were nailed down. I mean, God knows what would have happened if we'd had a fire, because we wouldn't have been able to get out the window, that's for sure. So the windows were nailed down. The door had about 200 locks on it. It'd take you about half an hour to open it, even if you had the keys. It was like, he used to go mad, like, when I was living there, because, obviously I'd be out late at night and he couldn't put all the locks on. But sometimes he did used to, and he would sit up and wait until I came home. So he would sit up till 2, 3 in the morning, because he didn't want to go to bed without all the locks on. So I'd come to the door, he'd put the locks on, I'd have to ring the bell, or he'd hear me trying to get my one key in the lock, and then you'd have this sort of 10, 15 minutes of him undoing all these bolts and things. He was paranoid about me, and I don't blame him, because, he and my mum, they were getting on by then. And then, of course, I moved out. Not that I could have done anything, really. I think one of my brothers lived there for a bit longer. But eventually he moved out, and they were just the two of them. Then my mum got dementia, so they were very vulnerable as well. Hi, Laura, your battery went flat. So, just make sure, and it's not only for elderly people, to be honest, everybody, you've got to be so aware of your security these days. And I think we've got a culture now as well of people who think they can just take, they don't have to work. We're not in a work, well, certainly not in the UK. It's not a work culture anymore. It's a benefits culture most of the time. And people don't think they have to work for anything. I think they get it handed to them on a plate, and if they don't get it handed to them, then they just go out and take it from somebody else. Who's the easiest person to take it from? Some elderly lady who lives up the road with only a cat for company. So I think this is the only good thing, I suppose, that maybe is going to come out of these horrible cases. Is it going to put attention on elder side? It needs more attention. When the vulnerable in our society are targeted, we should be outraged, because we're all going to get there. As I say, you're either going to die young and then you won't get there, but if you're lucky and you have a long life, that'll be you one day. You may, if you're in your 20s, you might not be able to imagine ever being 78 or 84, but if you're lucky, you will get there. So sad. I'm just going to read one article. I mean, there are a million articles that I could read about this. But let's read this. This is the National Library of Medicine talking about eldercide. Just make sure, yeah, it's sharing. Can you hear me okay? I think I went off for a minute, but I think I'm back. Let's see, what does it say? Older adult homicide is unique and under-researched, requiring immediate attention due to the rapidly aging population. Now, of course, that's another good point. There are a lot more older people now than there used to be because we're living longer. And probably then that means that there are more older people living alone, doesn't it? So, that's to be taken into account as well. So this study aims to contribute to the description of homicide at the individual, interpersonal, incident and community levels. This research comprised a whole state jurisdiction population-based retrospective analysis of homicide deaths of older adults aged 65 and older, which were reported to the coroner between 2001 and 2015. So this is a particular article, but it's just representative, I think. 59 homicide incidents involving 23 female and 36 deceased males. Average age 72. 16 female and 41 male offenders. So notice that male offenders are, of course, more common. And the average age of the offenders is 41. That's quite high, isn't it? Individual factors included the following. The deceased frequently had a recorded physical illness, 66%. And 1/3 were born overseas. This is in America somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where, but it's in America somewhere. The deceased, hang on. 1/3 were born overseas, 37%, or had recent contact with general practitioners and human services, 36%. Offenders frequently had a history of illicit drug or alcohol use, 63%. Diagnosed mental illness, 63%. And historical exposure to violence, 61%. Interpersonal factors included the following. The deceased offender relationship tended to be intimate or familial. Incidence factors 63%. Incidence factors included the following. That the incident predominantly occurred in the victim's home, 73%. Involving the use of a sharp object, 36%, bodily force, 31%, or blunt force, 20%. The older adult homicide is characterized by poor health in the victim, mental illness, substance abuse, or a history of conflict in either the victim or the offender. Familial deceased offender relationship and the home as the incident location. The results identify future prevention opportunities in clinical and human services settings. So this is I'm not going to read out this whole thing, but just a few things that are interesting. So the stereotypical older adult homicide victim has been characterized as an older woman who was killed in their home by a stranger. But in a recent meta-analysis, the actual proportion estimate was lower for females than males. And 1/4, 25.2%, were killed by family members, followed by 24.2% by strangers. Argument motive 36.1%, and a fireism mechanism in 24.5% of cases. And interestingly enough, when compared with younger adult homicides, older adult victims were more likely to be female. What's that? 2.5-fold, and to have been killed by a stranger during a felony in their own home. In the UK, older victims were also reported as primarily female, killed by a male spouse or a male adult child or grandchild, the latter being more likely than for younger adult victims. Domestic homicide, deceased offender identified issues, financial stresses, history of family violence, perpetrator mental health, and drug and alcohol abuse. Anyway, I'm not going to read out the whole thing, but it's interesting, isn't it? Now, I'm always saying I do think drugs have got a lot to do with it. It's, how can I say it? The drugs, especially weed and things these days, it's laced with chemicals that just send you loopy. And that can be combined with alcohol as well. People can pretend that it's not happening, or that, weed's good for you and that. It's not good for young brains. 100%. This chemical weed skunk that everyone's smoking is not good for mental health, for for young people's mental health. 100%. I've seen it firsthand. It's terrible. And the other thing, of course, somebody mentioned COVID there. I think it was you, Laura. COVID has changed, I think young people's mental health got worse because of COVID, and the isolation. And I think older people got scared during COVID of going out and about, first of all for catching COVID, but they're probably at home more now than I don't know about you, but I'm certainly at home more. I've never gone back to, God, I was always out and about. And since COVID, you just got into a habit of not going out. It's hard to go back to that again. And, people who are a lot older than me, they would have found it exactly the same way. So I do think COVID has affected young and old people particularly. And the other thing I personally think is young people, they should be working. Why shouldn't a young person be working? Even if they've got anxiety. I had anxiety when I was young, but I still went out to work. I had to go out to work. I didn't have a choice. Nobody supported me. So I do think there's too much. I know it's good that people are talking about mental health more, whereas years ago, nobody cared whether you had anxiety or not. I'm not suggesting we go back to it where it's completely ignored. But I do think we've got too much the other way. Young people should be out and working and, socialising. They shouldn't be sat at home smoking weed and playing video games. It's not good. And they go into fantasy worlds. They're not living in reality. And a lot of these games that they play are violent as well. And then they're susceptible to, conversion into terrorist groups and things like that, terrible. Yeah, too much entitlement these days. And, people can criticise it and what I'm saying. I don't care. This is what I think. This is what I think, you know, and the best thing that a young person can do is go out and get a job and become a valuable member of society. And I don't mean for society, I mean for them, for themselves. Again, I've seen this first-hand experience of this, of young people being cosseted too much. You know, it's like, yes, there are stresses in everyday life and at school and you know, trying to cope in the work environment. It is stressful and it does make you anxious, but what are you going to do? Just succumb to it. You've got to get through it. You've got to. You don't, you know, this is life. Like it or not, we're here. And you have to make the best of life. And it's difficult. It is difficult. And you should have support. Of course you should. But I don't, you know, personally, I don't see what good it does just sitting at home and playing video games all day long and smoking weed. What positive impact is that on any part of society? Anyway, that's my opinion. I'm sounding like Anne Widdicombe now. If we get as far as doing this interview. Now, something I just wanted to talk. So anyway, that's what I wanted to tell you about comparing those two cases and this horrible you know, thing about eldercide that seemed, but it's good that we're talking about it, because if it wasn't for cases like Nancy's and Anne's that are high profile cases, we'd probably, you know, there'd be elder people getting murdered in their own homes and we're never even going to talk about it. Now, something that came up for me about Anne in particular, because as I say, I know a lot of people won't have liked Anne Widdicombe for whatever opinions she had. And something that I'm finding very interesting, the more that I look into Anne, you know, Anne had this reputation of being homophobic because she didn't believe in gay marriage. She changed from the Church of England to Catholicism because she thought the Church of England was becoming too woke and ordaining, you know, female priests and things like that. And, you know, of course, a lot of people then thought she was homophobic. But one thing I've really noticed since Anne died is the absolute massive amount of famous gay men who are coming out and praising her to the heavens. So surely she could not have been that homophobic when you've got people like Dan Wootton, Andrew Pearce, Craig Revel-Horwood from Strictly. These are all high-profile gay men who are just raving about Anne, saying she was this and she was that, good things. So what was she? Was she homophobic? I mean, I don't know. She definitely was anti-gay marriage, but she said in an interview I just watched yesterday that a lot of gay men are anti-gay marriage. I didn't know that, but anyway, I just don't know, because I'm not gay. I'm not a gay man, and gay men will tell me what they think or what their impressions are. But it's certainly true that all these high-profile gay men, openly gay men, as I say, Dan Wootton, Craig Revel-Horwood, Christopher Biggins, Andrew Pearce, all got nothing but good things to say about Anne. So she can't have been, can she? Surely. Why are they all so full of praise for her? You know, maybe there's more we need to know about that. An Anne Widdicombe doll, Alora. Sorry, I can't see that. I want someone to knit an Anne Widdicombe doll. Anne Widdicombe doll. Yeah, why not? Why not? I've got a friend who knits dolls, actually. She made a nice one of me. Right, so this was a doll that my friend, this is supposed to be me, I'll show you. I love it. I love it. Can you see it? Yeah, this is me. Even I've got a little dress like that, actually. My hair up. When I have my hair up in the summer. This is Vicky Marie Chats. I absolutely love this little doll. Yeah, we need an Anne Widdicombe one. Yeah. Oh yeah, but so a horrible thing that happened was because because of Anne's comments about not approving of gay marriage, and she was very anti trans and things like that. She didn't agree with transitioning, etc. And again, that's her views. But some sort of the trans community absolutely fuming with Anne over this. And when she died, now the thing is, whatever you think about Anne or don't think about her, a university who works at the university in, I think it's Aberdeen. Heather Herbert, let's have a look at this. I don't know if you've heard about this, but she made some absolutely terrible comments. And, I just think if you're looking for people to be actually sympathetic towards trans rights, this is not the way to go about it by making the horrible comments that this person made. I'm going to put this article up. Anyway, they've been arrested. They have been arrested for the comments that they made on social media, and so they bloody should as well. Let's see, it'll come up in a minute, hopefully. There. Oh, it's not coming up. Oh, yeah, it's there. So, trans activist Heather Herbert was held by police after a post was made calling Anne Widdicombe's death good news, and which expressed hopes that the former MP, 78, was handcuffed to the bed as she screamed in agony. Now, that's not right, is it? Whether you agree with trans rights or you don't. Who says that? This is the person who says it. Heather Herbert. This is Heather. That's comments that she made on social media after Anne died. So they have been arrested and charged after comments were made online wishing Anne Widdicombe had an extremely painful death. Trans activist Heather Herbert, 50, was held by police after a post was made calling the death good news, and which expressed hopes the former MP, 78, was handcuffed to the bed as she screamed in agony in her final moments. And the comments were made on social media site Blue Sky before it emerged that Miss Widdicombe's death was being treated as murder. Herbert has now been arrested and charged in connection with the posts, Police Scotland confirmed. I mean, what sort of thing is that to say about anybody? So, whether you were a trans sympathiser or not, reading things like, oh, you wouldn't say that about your worst enemy. That's just, even if you thought it, you wouldn't say it. So a spokesperson said, we received reports on Saturday, July the 11th, relating to a post made online. And following further assessment, a 50-year-old has been arrested and charged in connection. A report will be submitted to the Procurator Fiscal. Aberdeen University, where Herbert works as a web developer, also said it was probing the remarks, and Miss Widdicombe repeatedly opposed LGBT plus rights during her political career. Well, this is what I mean. Why are all these? If she was so anti-gay, if that's true, why are all these how she was? I just don't understand. Why would people like Craig Revel Horwood, Dan Mutton, Andrew Pearce, Christopher Biggins, why would they have nothing but good things to say about Anne? So maybe she had her views, but that doesn't mean to say she was homophobic. You know, she was a committed Christian. I honestly just don't know. I don't know what to think anymore. You know, was she anti-gay? She can't have been. She can't have had all those friends who are openly, you know, high-profile gay men, openly gay men. She can't have been friends with all those people if she was homophobic. So maybe she's been misquoted or something. I don't know. Yeah. Well, anyway, then it just goes on to talk about the case. So she's been arrested. This lady, this trans activist, been arrested, been charged. You know what? That's not free speech. That is hate speech. That is hate speech. To wish that on someone. Now, it doesn't matter if she said it before she knew. What difference does it make if she get? I've seen a few posts like that where people have made a post initially, like slagging off Anne Widdicombe, then found out she was murdered, and then took their original post down and put a new post up saying, "Oh, sorry about my previous post, but I didn't realise she'd been murdered." What difference does it make? What difference does it make if she died peacefully in a horrible thing? No, I mean, people you can say things, but to say wicked thing, that is hate speech. And as you say, Alora, nasty sick person. Yeah, her brother was Anne's brother. He was a canon, was he, or something? But he died sadly as well. But just terrible thing to say. And as I say, it doesn't do trans rights any favours, does it? Because anyone who maybe was sympathetic towards trans rights would look at that and think, oh, that's a horrible thing to say. And this is a trans activist. Why be so nasty? Why? Anyway, just wanted to point that out. So where are we? How long have I been on for? I've got an interview, Van, that I'd quite like to go through, but it's quite a long interview, and I'll be commenting on it, which will make it even longer. I'll do the interview another time. I found there's quite a few interviews with Anne that are very interesting out there on the internet. You know, from sort of this particular one I was watching is only a year ago, and you could tell. I'll just show you that you might want to look at it. You might want to look at it yourselves, but I would quite like to go through it with people at one point. But I'll definitely recommend you watch it. Because the thing with Anne is, when you actually see her being interviewed, you know, and hear things from her own mouth, not what other people have said that she said, you do get a different impression of her. And you could tell with this interview, sorry, I've just got to share it. You could tell with this interview that the interviewer, so the interviewer is Lewis Nichols. This is the Lewis Nichols show. Definitely recommend, you know, if you want to get an insight into Anne Widdicombe, definitely a good interview. It was about a year ago she did this interview. Now, the interviewer, Lewis Nichols, he says to Anne at some point in this interview, you know, that he is a gay man and he explores this thing about is she homophobic or not, that, you know, people that she's friendly with who are gay, and what are her real thoughts about gays, etc. Anyway, so he does explore that with her, but you can tell that he's really surprised that he likes her, you know, because I'm sure as a gay man going into this interview, not knowing anything about Anne except what he'd seen, you know, was reported in the media, etc. He probably thought he wasn't going to like her or whatever, but you could tell that he did like her. You know, it's a very interesting interview. It gives you very interesting insight into Anne Widdicombe, you know, if you want to, if you want to know. But I'm going to look at more. There's quite a few interviews out there, of course, with Anne. My problem with the only, you know, my thing with Anne is the Brexit thing. She reiterates in this interview, you know, her opinions on Brexit, and of course she was, you know, instrumental in Brexit. I will never agree with her on that, on any part of it. But yeah, you know, that's her views, and I've got mine. But and you know, I don't have homophobic views, that's for sure. But I just cannot believe that Anne had really homophobic views, or I don't think she would be friends with so many gay men. But anyway, let me know what you think, of course, because maybe she could. Maybe you think she is homophobic. I don't know. So yeah, look out for that interview. Definitely, life stories. Anne Widdicombe life stories give you an insight into Anne. She's an interesting character, whichever way you look at it. Definitely an interesting character, and she'd be missed. You know, very British character, of course, and part of British sort of political history over the last 50 years or whatever. You know, I mean, she's ever since I can remember, and I've been interested in politics ever since I was a teenager. I always remember Anne, you know, as I say, my political views are different from hers, but I always remember her being out there. And I remember that interview with Mick Philpott, and I remember on Dancing, Strictly Come Dancing. So there's Anne. You know that photo? I love that photo of Anne and Aloysius because they both look just so happy. And I'm glad. I think Anne had a happy life. You know, that's the feeling that I got. She lived in that idyllic place. She went to a lot of interesting places. She's had an interesting and varied career. And I'm glad she had all that. And it's very sad that it all ended the way it did. And the same for Nancy. Will we ever find out what happened to Nancy Guthrie? She's another one, very interesting, long life, battled through adversities, becoming, you know, losing a husband at such a young age. Came through all the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune, only to be, you know, abducted from a bed by a man in a balaclava and a gun. Apparently, allegedly, I mean, we don't know. Was she, though? Was she? What really happened with Nancy? Okay, so I'll be back when there's any developments about either of those cases or any other case. I just want to thank everyone again, people that sent super stickers. So Alora, thank you so much. Julie, thank you. And Sarah, thank you so much for your super stickers and your support. I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, look, my dog, she knows I'm just about to finish off. But as soon as I say now, I'll see you really soon in the next video. She's like, oh, attention. Okay, so I will. I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, thank you so much. And And may your God go with you. Oh, and take care of you, because you are the most important thing. Because without you, probably everything else falls apart. You're probably the glue that's holding everything together. So you always have to make sure that you look after you too. Thank you so much. Bye.